Hey, and welcome everyone. I'm very excited for this episode here. I'm with my friend Yoel.
Hi.
Yes, he lives in the region and he came here a few years ago. You came I think we met in the museum the
We met
first
at
time.
Sukkot.
Yes,
I
in
came,
Sukkot.
I came to see what you guys call a sukkah.
Yeah, yeah, and then you came after that. You came after a few years again, and you not even a few years. It was
No,
something
it
like
was even less.
was like less.
We
than,
hit it off the first time, and
right.
we just kept in touch. And it was maybe half a year later, something that we finally got together and sat down. It was just
Correct. And you've told me really interesting things about Judaism since then that I really never had. Like, I just realized I really never had a conversation with basically a person who knows about Judaism and he's passionate about it. Because I've read a few things on the internet. I talked with people who are considered Jewish,
Yeah.
but I never had a conversation. I never sat
even
with someone.
with your Mori Michael.
Yes, I did talk about Judaism with him, but that's like, I think I even met you before I met him, and
Really?
yeah,
I thought you've known him for like years at this point, where you always talk about him.
I think it's been like 4 years since I know Mori Michael, but still,
So about the same amount of time.
yeah. But I still think it's like that's why I'm excited to be with you today, because I have like a few questions, and
Oh, that'll be fun.
maybe you also have a few questions on the Samaritans. I would be happy to answer, and I think a lot of the viewers would also want to know, like, what are the similarities, what are the differences between both religions and people, and
Yeah.
so here's what I'm going to ask first.
I was going to say, I think one of the first things to start with is to mention, how does each side view the other one? Just to bring up, I know you mentioned that once before in the podcast a little
Sure.
bit, but just kind of remind viewers and things, because it's not obvious necessarily.
I know what you mean. It's definitely not obvious, and but like even before I wanted, well, here's what I had
I'm not
in
saying to go
mind.
into depth on it, but just like one of the things is like as far as I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, within the Samaritans, there's one view about the Jewish people. There's no different
Right.
view. It's, yeah, we're all brothers and sisters, and then, okay, let's leave issues and fights, political fights and stuff about the Torah, whose Torah is more correct,
Sure.
where errors may have crept in onto either side. Leave that aside for a second. You guys view us as brothers.
Yeah, I mean, basically the sons of Israel were 12, and what Samaritans, where we believe we come from today, are from the two tribes of Ephraim and Menashe, Joseph, and also from Levi. So, and the Jewish people
Do
today
you guys
also.
have any Levim that are not Kohanim in the community, or everyone in the community
No,
is just
everyone is called Cohen if they're from the Levite tribes, and and the Jewish people come from Judah and Benjamin and half of Levi,
Yeah.
and this is why we do consider the Jewish people as our brothers and cousins, right? So definitely there's that connection. And when you asked, like, how do we view the Jewish people, it's really like, other than the view of viewing them of being brothers and cousins, we also view it as a way to also kind of, I'll explain it like this. We have our history, and there's like parts of our history that we really don't know what happened, and I think the Jewish side perhaps helps us and will help us also understand these times, like, for example, 2,000 years ago or something like that, what were happening. Because I think the Jewish people were in the south, right?
Yeah.
And the Samaritans were in the north, and I think maybe if you crack a few things that what happened in the south, it might help you also understand what happened in the other regions, or something.
Part of the other problem is, based on our traditions, it's not just a Jew doesn't necessarily have to come from the tribe of Judah, and that's basically, it's very timely actually to mention this, because it comes from the scroll of Esther, which is read on the holiday of Purim, which is something that you guys don't have.
Mm-hmm.
And that relates to the whole time period after the split between things and after the exile of the people from the land, which the Samaritans weren't exiled at all, were they?
That's the thing.
Or you're not really sure?
There's the story of the Assyrians basically exiling the northern tribes, but it was a small exile of 27,000. I say small because because it's considered like a small portion of what, like the huge population that was in the north. But that's
that's where the differing of views. We'll just use that and then go back to what is a Jew.
right.
That's where the differing of views comes in on the Jewish view of Samaritans, because in the Book of Kings, it talks about how when the Assyrians conquered, that they did this kind of population shifting, and this was something that was done at the time to kind of weaken people's strength in an area, and their connection to land is they would do population shifting. And so it mentions the population shifting, and then shortly after it mentions the only mentions really of the Shomronim, which refers to the region of Shomron, Samaria.
Right.
And so, but the way that some of the verses are written, it's written ambiguous enough, if you ask me. But many scholars, not all, I would say the more prevalent and predominant view is the view that the Samaritans are from the tribes from the peoples that were brought in.
Right.
And are not
the Kutim, basically, because of
from the Kutim and other things. But not everyone views it that way. There is obviously a discussion in the Talmud on that. But there's enough ambiguity there that there are plenty of people who do hold that they are.
Yeah, they're from the Israelites.
From the Israelites. I feel that you guys are part of us. We're all the same.
And like those people, are they scholars or rabbis or a mix? Because I've met both, a mix of rabbis.
It's a mix amongst the rabbis. I mean, as we said, the majority are going to stay with that because it's also, there's a lot of pressure, because even at that, Judaism is what we call rabbinic Judaism. You could go through the whole history of that, which is crazy in and of itself in the different tribes. You got a little bit into that last time on your show when you're looking up about the scrolls in Quran and the Essenes, which had, I didn't realize, I've never delved into it in deep, but it was interesting to hear that there's a number of things that were Samaritan versions in there that you were saying. I was not aware of that.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and there's the different debates of whether, like, how authentic were some of the pieces, because they would say like Samaritans were not in the south ever, right? Although I do know that there were some Samaritan populations. It is mentioned that they were in Jerusalem even, which also some people think that's weird. Like,
that's interesting. And not unheard of. I mean, look, they have. I mean, the sign is wrong. They say that there's a Samaritan village reigns of Samaritan village in the settlement of Kedumim,
which is how far is Kedumim from Mount Gerizim? Like,
it's about a 15-20 minute drive, depending upon traffic. So, by horse, it's going to be a little bit further. Horse or walking, I mean, it's not unwalkable at all. It's going to be a couple hours by walking. But, so they have an archaeological site that they say is a Samaritan village. It's so wrong. The signage is wrong. Whether it's actually Samaritan, that's a different issue. But like you said, they found other places that the Samaritans they weren't just in Nablus.
Okay.
Nablus or Shechem, whatever you want, whichever names, which
Nablus
is kind of funny because
be...
they're two different places even at that. Shechem, however you want to pronounce it, that's what's called Balata today. Right. Nablus was moved up from it, and
we have the old city, and we have like for example, well, Nablus we know is it means like new city, right? Neapolis. But you're right, it was also Balata. Is there something called, I mean, if you go to Nablus and you search for Balata, one of the things that would come out would be this really old archaeological site that
you're talking about Tel
Balata, right?
Which that is what they identify as being the ancient city of Shechem.
Right.
That's like the Shechem of
and there's
Shem
like some really
and
ancient
Hamor.
altars that were not for Samaritans. Did you ever hear about that?
Yeah, I've heard about
what
that.
were the people?
And that's also that's right next to the grave of Joseph.
Right. Tel Balata. Why do you think?
Balata.
What does Tel mean? I don't think it's like hill. What, you think so? Because it's not on a hill.
That's the place.
Like, that's how it looks like.
what a tell is, and I'm curious because, look, neither of us were there when it started. It may have actually been a hill at the very beginning. But what is a tell is that it's a place that they would, when they were building cities, they would eventually get to a point where it's like, okay, we're going to redo the city for whatever reason, and so they just dump a bunch of dirt, cover it over, and start over again on top. And one of the kind of cooler ones.
That's how it's like a hill, basically.
Yeah, that's why it gets to be like a hill, because it's man-made. One of the kind of coolest ones we could see that, and you have excavations, is right next to Beersheba.
They say like it used to look like this, like perhaps.
Maybe. People have lots of crazy ideas what they think.
You mentioned
We
Beersheba.
went there. Yeah, so there's one called Tel Sheva, which is actually up on a hill. And you can see in certain areas they excavate down a little bit further, and so you can see the different levels, and some it's all one. But
You know, this is Tel Ras, right? Sorry,
No,
Tel
Tel Balata.
Tel
Tel Ras, you
Balata,
see it
and
there in
then
the
you
hill.
see it, yeah, like right in front of it, you see Tel Ras, which is like on Mount Gerizim, also
Yeah.
like a hill, which also has really interesting history. You know, did you ever see like the coin that it's? There's a
I've never
specific coin.
Oh, I haven't seen the coin. I've looked into it a little bit.
You can check it out like real
I wanted
quick
to
here.
do that, to hike that with you one morning.
So
When we did
not this one, but Tel Ras coin on Mount Gerizim. Just a small quick. Yeah, there it is.
Oh wow.
So you see, this is apparently the temple that used to be on Tel Ras, near
Oh,
Joseph's
wow.
tomb. And there's a whole
You're
like
saying
history.
looking to Joseph's tomb.
Yeah, exactly.
What does it say on the coin there? Go back.
Here,
Nah.
is that in Greek?
Is that, yeah. Wait, no. I'm not really sure. It
Here's
looks
a better,
Roman,
like,
actually.
Thing on it, you know, like a better way to understand what is
That
drawn.
is Greek.
Do you see this like
That one's
ladder?
definitely Greek. Yeah.
So the ladder here
It's
apparently
probably not a
was
ladder. It's probably stairs.
stairs. Sorry, yeah, I meant to say stairs. They were coming out from Nablus to.
Oh,
to
those
the
are the
top.
stairs that
So-
you talked about that one time.
Yeah, I did mention to you.
No, I don't think you mentioned me directly, but you mentioned on the podcast from time at least.
Yeah, here it says it's basically Hadrian, right? So
Okay.
it's one of the Roman emperors from 117 to 138. That makes it like over 2,000 years,
Yeah.
almost 2,000 years. And it talks about like different entrance that leads to a square with the horned altar, you know, all these things. So
Yeah.
you know, it's interesting. You know, archaeology is everywhere about Samaritans and also about like Romans having.
Hold on. Greek legend from the bottom upwards. So
Where is it?
now we see the writing on the coin, which that is Greek, but it's like there's definitely a
The
number of things
translation
that are
here,
kind of
right?
weird.
And it says here. So the translation of this is what?
Hold on. So hold on.
Flavia.
Nia. What is that C figure? I'm not used to that in Greek. That's what I'm confused about. That's what threw me off on the first coin you showed me. So you see the fourth character in the second word there?
Oh, you have
No, go
these.
back to the other one. So you have on the first thing you have Fad, I'm guessing it is.
This one?
No, the second line up from the bottom.
This one.
So that would say Fad there on the left. But that C figure, that's an older character that I'm not familiar with.
Do you read the Greek?
I know I learned the Greek characters. I can't translate or anything, but I can read it.
Cool. You know, all these things.
So
it's
definitely a S sound. Which trying to think. Similar to it. You know what? That must be a older form of a sigma, which is a complete circle, similar to the samach. Have you ever
Why do
seen
you
that,
think?
by the way?
Which one? This?
The fourth character, which looks like a C, right?
What about it? Like here?
So
This one.
yeah,
Neapolis.
Nias. I wanted to say this, not, but the.
So because it does say
Neap.
here Neapolis.
I know, but that's they're making their own thing there.
Okay.
No, it's a S sound.
And then the year.
It's more like a
You know-
sigma because look at what they write afterwards.
Why do you
Because
think?
you have Sirius. Because if we look over here, this obviously has to be a S sound, similar to like in how it functions in Cyrillic, in Russian. It's got to be a S. So this would read Niaspodeos. Niaspodeos.
Yes, Podeos.
Sirius Palestine, Palestinas, et.
I think they mean like the year, maybe.
The pay, CE.
Okay.
Ah, voila. That's so he says so. Et is year in this case, and that's so it says pay, but that's like 88. It says down here. I'm looking at this translation, which is weird. I don't get why they say Flavia because that's a duh. That's a dalid, unless it was a typo.
I think it's just like a simplified
Unless
version
it's a typo.
of the translation.
This could be a typo. That could be a lambda, which would have no line underneath.
Sure.
Actually, it must be.
Why do you think they
must
chose
be a typo
like,
because this would
Mount
also be
Gerizim?
valid. Who?
Like the Romans. Do you have any idea?
The Romans?
I think it's maybe. I would say it's a strategic area or something.
It's strategic.
Or something like that.
But if that's the case, they would also need to be on Eval. You would think.
Makes sense, but like it reminds me of this thing.
But there's so much less up there. There's a little bit going on up there, but not
There
much.
is, but like there's this thing I watched. You know, Ancient Aliens, the famous
Actually,
series.
before we go too far, I wanted to look up one other thing.
Sure.
We just, since we're talking about the letters, I don't know if you've ever seen this. Now that's an awesome chart because you have on the left you have the Roman characters. Next to you have the Greek's equivalent, and then you see the orders switched there. They show on the Roman ones.
So this is Arabic. This is Assyrian Hebrew. Next to
That's one of the ancient Hebrews.
Well, one of the ancient Hebrews, and then this is the Greek.
Yeah.
And then you have
Well, you
the
can
English.
see that the ancient Hebrew there is different from the ancient Hebrew that you guys use.
True. Yeah.
They call that one Paleo Hebrew.
Do you read our Samaritan Hebrew? Can you?
Slowly, I'm starting to learn some of the characters. I'm starting to pick them up.
Wow, nice.
I mean, I learned a few of them when we were doing the Amazon tours.
Why, like, what is known to be like some people around the world who use ancient Hebrew other than Samaritans?
I don't know
Do you
anyone else who uses it.
Never searched. It's really interesting. So,
But yeah.
yeah.
So anyway, do you want to go look at? Did you want to look up Tel Sheva?
No. I just wanted to search about like ancient aliens.
Yeah.
Basically,
Oh, yeah.
that they had this episode where they talked about Mount Gerizim being a place where a lot of UFO sightings have been found.
Really?
Yeah, it's interesting because I've been following ancient aliens for quite a while, and they suddenly have this theory about like many researchers here and scholars coming and basically seeing unidentified flying objects. They don't mention the Samaritans at all, but they mention Mount Gerizim being, for example, believed that where the Jacob and all the prophets came. And,
Yeah. Oh, so going back with the Jew thing, so the predominant view of Jews on Jews is that the overwhelming majority of Jews are from the tribe of Judah, with the exception of the Levi tribe, which provides the Levim and the Kohanim, the priests.
Right.
But the thing is, that's not necessarily true because, yeah, there was definitely some mingling. There's definitely some people from the northern kingdoms and the northern tribes that said, you know what, we do want to stick to that. And there was, at that point, there was a lot more population shifting out of will, not out of force, too, because there was different views and there was idol worship that started creeping in on both sides, as we know, and that's what really drove people further apart as well.
Right.
But so the Jewish view, this idea of Jew, I mean, originally, yeah, you had the kingdom of Judah, which included Judah, and it's interesting that we always forget. Hold on, that Shimon was also there, Simon.
Right.
But
it makes me wonder something.
Based on Esther, I want to get this in. Sure. So when it describes one of the main characters, one of the protagonists of the story is Mordechai, and we refer to him as Mordechai HaYehudi, the Jew, because when it describes him, it goes through and it says his lineage, and that he was Ish Yemini, which literally means a right man, but oftentimes you see the expression Ish Yemini to refer to somebody from the tribe of Benjamin, Binyamin.
Okay.
So the history and tradition we have is that he was from the tribe of Benjamin, and that Esther was one of the 4 times that the tribe of Benjamin actually had, one of the 4 times, that the tribe of Benjamin had the role of royalty, whereas the rest of the time, or not Benjamin, one of the 4 times that the sons of Rachel had royalty, whereas the rest of the times it all comes down to the tribe of Judah.
Mm-hmm. Being the biggest tribe, basically, in the south.
At that point, they became...
Because is that why it was
large.
the kingdom of Judah? It was called like that. Because of the biggest
city,
tribes being.
I don't know. It's the city of Jerusalem was on the border between Jerusalem and was on the border of Judah and Benjamin, and it was kind of shared between the 2 tribes. And the first king by the Jewish tradition is... Oh, so I was saying just quickly that he's called Ish Yehudi, so it's from that point where we say, oh, well, he's called Ish Yemini, he's from the tribe of Benjamin, but also Yehudi, so we say that this term Yehudi, Jewish, is inclusive of all tribes. Okay. So by that means, I personally believe that at this point, unless someone has a tradition that they're Levi or Kohen, that really anyone who's Jewish, aside from anyone that knows that they're a convert, could be from any one of the tribes, and we won't know, which is why it's kind of, for that reason actually, it's kind of interesting when we do, where it shows up is with the Torah readings on the Sabbath. When you're called up, they give preference to a Kohen, then to a Levi, and then from a Yisrael. They don't say Yehudi, they say Yisrael.
So because it's encompassing all the tribes. Wow, interesting. Yeah, I mean, there's also this thing about the 10 lost tribes, and people ask me once, sometimes, and we do believe that there were the 10 tribes in the north, basically, and then 2 tribes went to the south.
But it's funny because it's not really 10 tribes in the north.
It was really spread.
I mean, depending upon how you're calling the tribes. No, even in terms of the things, I don't know why people say 10. It's 9 that were in the north.
9, and because wasn't it half of Levi and...
So, are you counting the tribes based on the count that includes Levi, or not including Levi? Because Levi's split. They're on their own thing.
Right, and then in the south, what is the usual things between Samaritans? They say it's Benjamin, Levi, and half of Levi and Judah.
But the thing is, if you look up a map, we should pull up a map of the breakdown. And I'm curious, actually, at some point to delve in. This is why I want to sit down.
What should I say? Tribes of Israel
map, yeah.
In the Holy Land, maybe.
Yeah. So the problem is...
maybe this one? Well, let's see what this one say. We could...
yeah, that's pretty good.
So Shimon, Yehuda, Dan, Ephraim.
So, here. So you have Benjamin. So basically the way it was Jerusalem here is on the border. They're showing it being entirely in Benjamin, but it was between the 2. Okay. And so the southern kingdom, tribe of kingdom, is here. Levi's not, because they're spread throughout in cities.
Yeah, but I thought they would say half or half.
No.
They don't mention it at all.
So you have the southern here.
Can you share that?
Oh, we're on the wrong map.
Just here.
There we go. Sorry.
So yeah.
So here's the border. This is the southern kingdom, the kingdom of Judah, as they call it, and this is the northern kingdom, what they call the kingdom of Israel. And it's when you really start getting into it. First off, it's funny that they would say, "Oh, the 10 lost tribes," because why? Let's count the northern kingdom tribes: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So why is it 10? Because Shimon was entirely, and it's not. This is a poor representation, because Shimon was much more spread out as little pockets here and there where they had within Judah. But this is already a interesting simplification, because if you actually sit down and learn, I'm curious to. This is one of the things I want to talk about with your uncle sometime. So your say, I forget how your Sefer Joshua is. I want to read it at some point. But in ours, it's basically a few stories about how the Israelites came in, conquered the land, and the battles they had. But the rest of it is all basically a real estate document stating where everyone is, all the different cities. Wow. And when you start reading it, you realize that there were some city names that were used multiple times.
Like what?
I don't remember offhand. I think Lachish is actually one of them. But there's some names that I use multiple times, and it becomes very clear that there's groups in the south and in the north. There's the second issue is that when you read the line, when you read it carefully, you start to realize that there's actually some overlap between the different tribes. They always write as, these clear-cut boundaries, but each tribe had its clear-cut boundaries, but the clear-cut boundaries were overlapping sometimes. So
I see.
So the Benjamin
region... I thought
region,
Ephraim was more up, by the way.
Ephraim has a little bit more, because where is Shechem? Is it in Ephraim or is it Manasseh? It's very interesting because
there's mentioning in the Judges, I think, about
it's mentioned in all over places, and I'm trying to remember in the original giving out. I think it's mentioned in Manasseh
or something.
But they also refer to Shechem as being Har Ephraim.
That's the thing, yeah.
So it becomes very confusing. It's like
some people, for example, might think that they would consider Mount Ephraim also. Is it called Har Ephraim? You said?
Yeah.
So they would consider it as because the Samaritans say they're from Ephraim, so it's probably also mentioning of House of Ephraim meaning Samaritans.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh. But even still, even if you want to make that claim, Shechem and Gerizim are not in the Ephraim region based on this map.
Mm-hmm.
They're in the
Manasseh region.
Manasseh, yeah. The other thing that's not mentioned is the tribe of Dan moved up north partly.
Or if people ask you before, what is Judaism? That word. Obviously, you can write many books about it.
Absolutely.
But if you had to choose a few words and a few sentences of what is Judaism, what do you think are the most important words you can talk about, sentences you can talk about this to answer this question?
I think the most important things are the sons of Israel, the Torah, and I don't want to deify, to make a god out of him, but the prophet of Moses, who was the agent of God to kind of channel the Torah from this kind of infinite abstract object into something that has words and is finite and bound, while at the same time being something that is a timeless document. I mean, that's one of the main important views, I think, for both the Jewish and the Samaritan views, that the Torah is timeless. Mm-hmm. While yes, it is written in a language that has evolved, yes, the examples are given in terms of things that could be understood in the time period when it was given.
Mm-hmm.
It's written in such a way that it applies to all times. The rules apply, and even when things new are invented, you can learn out how to deal with them from there. I mean,
can you give an example? I have a few examples that I think are qualify for this, but can you give a few examples of timeless wisdom, if you want to call it?
Timeless wisdom. So, one of the things I'll say on it is, I think both of us kind of have this tradition that there was, in addition to what was written down, there was that which was given over that was not written down, for whatever reason.
Oral Torah?
The oral Torah, exactly. And that's why I kind of hate when there's this view, it's like, they don't accept Torah Shabbal Peh, as we call it, the oral Torah. It's like, no, right. We just have different oral Torahs.
True. I mean, we just interpret things, so we don't call it oral Torah.
People are going to call me a bit of a heretic, maybe, but you look into even the Talmud, and you see that there are differing opinions, and people would fight with one another over stuff. It's like you see that communities, even then, inside these so-called Jewish communities, what became Rabbinic Judaism, which kind of led to what's Rabbinic Judaism. It's one who delves into it and really puts their heart and soul into delving and reading the sources and understands, you realize that the earlier Israelites had very different ways of keeping Torah, very different ways of doing it. So one of the things that's kind of the timeless is and I'll use the oral Torah because this is the first thing that comes to mind, is the laws of Shabbat. So we have, and it's based on a Mishnah in Shabbat, in the tractate of
what is the
Shabbat.
I don't want to sidetrack you a lot, but quickly, what is Mishnah exactly? What's when you say Mishnah?
So
is it like a law or?
So Mishnah literally means teaching.
Teaching.
It's a teaching. It's a giving over. I mean, kind of means second teaching. Even it's weird because the word it's got sheni in it, but shoneh is also to teach. So
almost like to teach means to change in some ways. I like that.
Exactly. Because you also have that's also in there. It's like when you start delving into language and the etymology of things and whatnot. Etymology is origin of language and words. If you don't know that one.
I think I know that one, yeah.
It's when you get into it, there's just so much wisdom and hidden things that sometimes, like, you have two words that are very closely related in their spellings, but can mean two opposite things, and it teaches. And like, probably one of the biggest ones is this idea of kaneh or kina, which can be translated as zealousy, which is like going forth and really grabbing hold of one's religion, like with a pride and things. But it's also jealousy.
Envy,
exactly. Envy, jealousy, which is like the complete opposite of it. It's like, it's two sides of the same coin, encapsulated in one word.
In ancient Hebrew, we say "chani," on the Lord being chani.
Yeah.
Also, like jealous of basically that He would not like you to pray for other gods.
Correct.
So,
but you use that same word to describe Pinchas when he grabs the spear. Or
he was jealous on the Israelites.
And not jealous, zealous.
Zealous.
It's not that he was jealous.
Okay.
He was zealous. He was being strict and staying. He was being pious in a sense.
Oh yeah, of course not jealous for sure. I know what you mean, but I for a second I forgot that zealous also means, in a sense, that he's.
It's a piety. How would you say it? Sorry.
I mean, what I would describe it would be that he, like, I gave you an example of Hashem not being, that wouldn't be happy for his Am to pray for another.
Yeah.
But it's not in a jealous way; it's in a zealous way. So I see what you mean. Yeah, it makes me wonder because we have the same meanings. We have the same. That's why I asked you Mishnah. We have that. It was just that we don't call it Mishnah, and we have those words, and we have those, like examples that would really give you wisdom, even though it's just how we view it. So
what is Mishnah? Around the time of the destruction of, what is this? That was Second Temple time period already. When it was becoming clear that things were going downhill. So you had Judah the prince, Yehuda Nasi, and he decided, you know what, I'm going to write down and compile these teachings. And he definitely gave certain sort of preference to certain sides, but he very often brought dissenting opinions and multiple opinions, 2-3 opinions sometimes, how to do things. And so that's what the Mishnah is. It's the first kind of writing down of these oral traditions to preserve them, for fear that with the impending exile and spreading out that people were not going to do it, which is why it's in Hebrew. But then you have the Talmud, which is a commentary on the Mishnah.
Mm-hmm.
The Talmud, or the Gemara, is a commentary on the Mishnah, which was done both. They have one
almost like a Pirush also.
It is. It's a Pirush is a
interpretation or commentary.
So they bring further depth, whereas the Mishnah tried to be very kind of quick, and the idea was that it's something that could be memorized.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the tradition we have is that everything that's in the Mishnah were things that people memorized and then gave over from one to the other, and they tested people, and they've done little games.
They tested people to see if they
make sure that they remember
have
right.
the same as the printed. Written.
Before the printed.
Okay.
So a person was given over.
So the test would be to talk with the person who knows a lot.
So correct. So you have what we call today a rabbi. They were kind of like the scholarly ones, and one, like, the term rabbi today has been watered down so much, but the people then that were like the scholarly ones, the people was this select group that they were the ones that sat and they learned. They're like the academics in a sense. That some were leaders of community, some were not, and things. But to get that level, and to get to what we call this idea of smicha, laying the hands on and giving over this in English we call it ordination, which is okay. Literally means laying the hands on us. It was receiving your previous teacher's blessing that, okay, you've memorized the material, you know the material, you can give it over. And the idea was that people would memorize it. Mm-hmm. I mean, look, even the Torah itself at points was more memorized, and there's issues about, that's why errors have crept in, because they say that things weren't written down and this and that.
Some people say melodies were also made to remember.
Absolutely.
So that's really a beautiful thing, because I think one of the main reasons why I remember so many poems that we have, and also we have melodies for the Torah, but also many poems we have, is because of the melodies. Yeah. I can't imagine knowing them without the melodies.
Oh, I can tell you, there's certain prayers that I remember the words and I can throw different melodies to them. There's certain ones that's like, I remember it with a given melody, and that melody helps me remember it.
Right. For sure. Do you know when was the first melody made? Because for us it's something around 700, 800 years ago.
That's it?
That's
it?
Yeah, melody-wise. Wow. There's a few that are much older, but the average would be around that. But the poems themselves are much older.
You're saying ones with words that were done, or melodies for
the actual singing of the way, the actual singing.
There one. I'm trying to remember if there's anything before. There's one tune that is used for the priestly blessing in some communities.
I'm saying we have a special.
That they say that this melody is from the times of the temple.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
The temple in Jerusalem. I forget if they say it's the first or second, but from the time of the temple even.
Interesting. So there's another thing I was wondering about. So you have in the Jewish traditions, there's the morning prayer and there's the evening prayer, right?
We also have an afternoon prayer.
An afternoon prayer.
Yeah.
And how long each prayer takes usually? Is it different in every?
Yeah, each prayer differs. I mean, the only thing that appears in all three prayers is what's called the Amidah, the standing prayer, which is sometimes called the Shmona Esrei, for 18, because it had 18 blessings. Although the irony is that it's actually 19, because one was added.
Okay.
For all the, against all the, oh gosh, what's the term I'm looking for here? In English, I could think of the Hebrew words, but all the ones who are like the heretical characters and whatnot, but that's not the word I'm looking for. There's another word.
We have something
both from inside the enemies, both basically a prayer against the enemies of the Jews that for both for inside the Jewish people and those who are outside.
And do you have something similar to us where you read this portion on Sunday and this portion on Monday, right?
Yeah.
And also you have parts where there are poems and Mizmerim, and parts that are from the Torah straight,
absolutely.
Right? So because we have, for example, we bow down 3 times on the ground, and those 3 bow downs are different every, we read different verses every day.
Oh, wow.
And these verses are from the Torah.
Okay.
So I think you have the same.
So for the most part, the prayers are the same, the same 3 prayers. Leave the Sabbath aside for a second.
Sure.
On a normal day, on a weekday, you have the 3 prayers. The morning prayer is the longest of the 3. The afternoon and evening prayers are similar in length. It's hard to say which one is shorter. It really depends on kind of where you are.
We have 7 hours spread on Shabbat. Maybe, there's an hour in the entry.
Yeah.
3 hours from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. Do you have early prayers, really early?
So it depends. Some people, the morning prayers, some people try and pray it at sunrise. Other people
a little bit
later, but based on the idea of when a king would wake up and heave things, that's kind of like the cutoff time for prayers, the way that it's learned out in the Gemara and the Talmud.
Interesting.
But the morning prayer is the longest of them, and depending upon where you are, it can range anywhere from about 25 minutes, half hour, once again weekday, to about an hour, depending upon where you are. There are some places that are even shorter than that, but
I would imagine the longest prayer you have would be on Yom Kippur.
Yeah.
Because we have that too. It's a 25-hour non-stop.
Ours is not like that though.
You have a stop. You stop like at night. You close the synagogue and then you come back, right? At night.
Yeah. Some people stay overnight and they'll read from the book of Psalms and things all night.
Beautiful.
But that's the other thing with our prayers is that
we read the whole Torah during Kippur, by the way? No.
Some people have a custom to read from the last book, from the book of Deuteronomy, because that's kind of like a summary of the Torah, because the first 4 books, that's hand of God.
It is. It's one of my. It's
fifth
probably
book
my
is,
favorite book. The 5th.
All right, we're about to go in. I'm now going to repeat to you kind of the main points of things, and it's still very much godly inspired, but it's Moses giving over his final charge to the people.
Yeah, it's a beautiful book. I was wondering about how you interpret this verse, where Hashem says, or the Torah basically says that there was light, and then there was light. What was this light in Judaism? Like,
oh
how
my
is it
gosh!
interpreted? Is it like a big question at you now?
I'm not prepared to answer that on 1 foot.
I know what you mean, because it's
that's
really
what I need to prepare for, because look, one of the big things of the Jewish teaching is we have this whole kind of the mystical teachings, the what you call the Kabbalah and the Hasidut and things, or Hasidic teaching is the English word for it. And these kind of mystical teachings spend a lot of time on that concept. Why is it like that, and dealing with it. It's
like a meta understanding, or
correct. There's a lot written on that, and while I've learned a bit of things on it, it's not one of those topics that's like.
Right, you want to give it
I'm not
justice.
saying it's a topic that I don't. Even that, it's not. I'm not gonna say it's not like it's one of these topics. I don't dislike the topic. Don't get me wrong.
No, I understand.
But it's one of those topics I would not call myself an expert on, and certainly not to speak.
To go. Yeah, I just asked about the general view.
Oh my gosh!
Right, and that's not even. There's not even a general view on it.
No, light and water are 2 of the biggest things, because Torah is compared to both light and water. And so
the reason why I asked about this verse specifically is because in the Samaritan traditions, there's also obviously all the different interpretations. One of them is this light was Moses. One of them is this light is the morning light we get before the sun rises.
Okay.
Because it's interesting, because this verse is mentioned, and then after a few verses of that, you have that Hashem created the small light and the big light, right? So where did the first light come from? You know. So that's why I opened up a set. But I think you gave it justice. I think that's a fair answer for real.
Yeah.
You just gave it in a way that this is the.
I would say
that's
one of the hardest topics to really discuss,
right.
Because in the mystical teachings, one of the things that gets into a lot is also the idea of the direct light and the reflected or returning light.
Okay.
And how it interacts with objects and comes back and things, and it's you can spend hours and hours just discussing the
it's also
details of that.
Literally the first thing that comes out of Hashem's mouth in the Torah, right? You said Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim v'haaretz, and you say Yomer Elohim, and then that's the first thing ever. So it's.
But it's not just that; it's also the first thing that's described as being created as good.
All right, and that's what I thought about
light.
now. Yeah,
light is good,
for sure. It would be really interesting to know what even our ancient ancestors thought about it. Because you can't say it's only light or anything. So again, and I'm talking about different beliefs of Samaritans and Jews about it. So, and I think this sets an example of how much. How big, it's a sea, the Torah I'm talking about. It's a huge sea of
that goes back
each
to
verse can go
that
to
example of water once again.
For real. One thing I don't want to make you dive too deep into it, but one thing I also want to learn more about is the Vayihye Harki. Hareki.
Yeah.
How would you say it in English? The
firmament.
Yeah. That's also really interesting because
It's very interesting.
creation. And like what brought me to this topic probably also
that's also one of those things of like, because I mean in kind of modern Hebrew, the closest word to rakia is reka. I mean, rakia is used a little bit with things, but reka is a background, like a backdrop, which implies that there's something even when you have a backdrop, it implies that there's something kind of like behind that. It's like this idea of a covering. And when you get into the spiritual, the mystical things, that's also one of those things that it's just like you could spend depth going into.
Wow. And probably like the Zohar also talks about it and all those things.
I mean, it also gets into...
Our scholars also talked about these things, like Marka, maybe. You know Marka? We have a Samaritan scholar, his name is Marka also. He has a... we have a huge set of like scrolls and information that we inherited from Marka. Apparently he got... probably, some people say he got affected by also the Greek philosophy. Not in a way that affected his Samaritanism, but maybe his way of thinking, maybe about how to interpret Torah. Here's
an interesting ponderance on the spot, and I'm just thinking about this idea of like background and rakia. Maybe it has something to do with like kind of, that's like the creation of like the background noise or temperature of the universe.
Interesting.
Because when you start delving into things, and it's a shame. I know a physicist. He's already passed on a few years now. Not Jewish, not necessarily religious in any regards, as is many scientists. He was a particle physicist who had this whole theory about how the world came down to the creation. He could boil it down to one single particle of light traveling, and this is how the universe started. He couldn't figure out where. He couldn't figure out one particle of light. And everything came from that, which is kind of cool because that... You
do have like this thing called the singularity.
Correct. That jives with Torah very much. The idea that there was this one particle of light, but he's like, I can't explain where it came from. It's not like he was these, the world expanding collapse. No. One particle of light traveling along, and everything came from that. And unfortunately, it was one of his final papers, and it never got published. Very hard to understand the paper. And... who knows? Maybe one day it'll be a polished thing, but it's like, even at that, how many people are going to understand it? Because like, it's a physics paper that's on like the edge of like metaphysics and philosophy.
Right.
It's just this kind of wild thing.
I mean, science it's ultimately also some kind of philosophy, you know.
Yeah.
And I think also. Philosophy is something like people use to understand things, but there's also this 10th sentence where it says that you also learn philosophy to drop it.
Yeah.
Did you ever hear about that? So it could be some people like can go into a spiral of never ending, like going around topics. But what are we alive? We're alive here to explore the world, and it's exciting to learn all these things. And I think the Torah. What I love personally about the Torah is that you really can go in depth, like we said, like we've been talking a few minutes about one small verse, literally.
Yeah.
Like for example, the word Yaomer. For example, sometimes I'm curious, like why do we say Yaomer to point to the talking? Like why does the word Yaomer means talking?
Yeah.
Like all those origins of words.
So that's one question that I have for you. If we want to talk about differences, as we're getting close to.
Go ahead.
I don't know how long we want this to run. I know we're getting near an hour now.
We're good. Yeah. Probably like a few more minutes, 10 minutes.
Actually, it's funny. Yeah. But one of the questions that I have is, in the Jewish Torah, we have this concept of the vavahipuch, and so a lot of words start with the vav. I don't know if that's one of these small differences. If the Samaritan Torah gets rid of that,
we have a lot of verses that start with the vav actually,
and so it's verses, and also verbs. And the thing is, the role of the vav, when it's on a word, when it's at the start of a verb, is not necessarily and. It can be, depending upon the context. If it's on a noun, for sure it's and. But if it's at the start of that, it kind of means and, but it also switches the tense from what's written from. So past goes to future and future goes to past. Is that concept in the Samaritan Torah or no? Like Vayomer, we would say, and he said.
I think we have that.
If it's in modern Hebrew, Vayomer is, and he will say.
I think we do have that because I've been searching for, I've been reading in the last parasha about a word that is. So now we're reading the first of the second book, El Shemot, right?
Yeah.
And there's this word, I want to remember what is it. In actuality, it's past.
Yeah.
But because there's a vav before it, you completely understand it to be
okay, so you do have this concept.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have that as well. And it's like, if that word appears elsewhere without the vav, it's whatever tense it is, but the vav switches. Okay, so you do have that.
We do. And it's really interesting you mentioned it just now. Like 2 days ago I was talking, like the beginning, on Shabbat, I actually looked on this.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting coincidence. For real. So we are almost done here, but I want to try something in the end with you.
Yeah.
You don't have to do this, but there may be one try. Me and a few friends, we were back from work this one day, and we were stuck in a traffic jam.
Okay.
And I proposed this interesting game for them, about saying verses in the Torah, and then the last word that I say, the last letter of that word, you have to start another verse that starts with that letter.
Oh my gosh.
You want to try with me a couple times?
I'll try. Unfortunately.
Just from the Torah, Chumash. It's just 2 tries.
Yeah, I get that.
Because it brings up interesting conversations. That's the idea.
Oh, for sure.
So, I'll give you a small example.
I get it. I got the idea. I totally get the idea. No, my issue is not that. My issue is being able to remember verses well enough to do
it's
that. It's
literally like a couple words. You don't have to. You don't have to say a whole words. Like if I say, for example, Az Yashar Moshe Upnei Israel.
Okay.
And so sang Israel. So sang Moses and Israel. So it would be Lamed for you.
Lamed. Oh my gosh, the first verse that comes to mind is not in Torah.
See, there are some letters that are also a little bit...
The first verse that comes to mind is this famous one from Esther. LaYudim Haita Simcha Ora v'Simcha v'Sason v'Yikar.
Well, that's still beautiful, but that's the thing, because you have the 5 books and you have those extra books and you have so many verses from outside.
What people remember. I mean,
usually Samaritans read the Torah so many times, so we only are focused on the 5, and
it reminds
easy to
me.
catch those.
I think we're a little past. I'm trying to remember when he passed away, what the date was.
Lamed.
Was there what?
Who?
When this individual that I know passed away. Okay. Very, very special individual, very holy. So his grandchildren had this game, kind of like this almost. It's called Stump Zadie.
Okay.
So Zadie is one of the ways in Yiddish to say grandfather, if you didn't know. And so what they would do is they would flip open a Tanakh. So all of the 24 books, right? They would point to a verse. They would read part of the verse. I forget if they read the whole verse or just part of the verse. And what he would do, he would then tell them, starting the verse before, read that verse, and then tell them the verse afterwards. Because he knew all of Tanakh
by
memory,
heart.
By heart, all of it.
Okay.
And they were like, he died the undefeated champion.
Wow.
Very special individual.
It's actually almost the same idea as this game we played. And
it's a very similar idea.
What I liked about it is, for real, it would we would mention the person would say the letter, and then you would get really challenging letters that you start thinking there's no way a verse that exists starts with. But there are. You'll definitely find.
Yeah, there's.
And then you'll talk about this verse and everything.
Oh my gosh.
But I think one of the easiest the easiest words you would find would be vav. For us. The Torah is over. And hey is also really easy. But when it comes to, for example, tough.
Yeah.
That's when it comes challenging. Teeth. Is it teeth? Tough? There's a tet and there's a tough, right?
Yeah.
So the tough is the harder one.
The tough is the harder one?
Tough is tough. You know what I mean?
Oh my gosh. I'm trying to think of something that starts with Lamed.
Let me help you with that also. 'Cause I don't I played this game, but I don't remember all the verses that we mentioned. But if I have to say Lamed, there's this one where they said Lama Tamud Bechutz, right? Do you remember who said that?
Oh gosh, who said that? Is that Lot to the Malachim?
No, he wouldn't want them to go in, I think.
No, he wanted them to come in.
Lot? Yeah.
No, he wanted them to come in because if they stood outside, everyone's would have attacked them and things.
Lot? Didn't they want to break into the door and?
No.
He
To the Malachim.
To the Malachim. He
said
to
the angels that arrived.
True.
But that's not him, you're saying.
But that's not him. I was talking about Yaakov when למה תעמוד בחוץ ויש מקום לנו הרבה מקום. So I see sometimes you remember the verse, but you need time to remember the actual story. But it was Yaakov being also with coming to see Laban. I'm pretty sure about this one.
And he said to him to go back?
Let's give it a quick search.
Yeah, no.
למה תעמוד בחוץ.
There you go.
There it is. ויאמר בוא ברוך אדוני, למה תעמוד בחוץ, ואנוכי פניתי הבית ומקום לגמלים. So,
right.
It's, if we continue here, where do you see all the verse anyway?
Look it up in a separate place. Look up that reference.
There it is.
No, it's just that verse. You want the verse after and before?
No,
go back.
Go back?
Do you have one for... Hold on.
Wait. There's the verses. We can go here.
That's what I was saying. Oh.
ויבוא האיש הביתה ויחתך הגמלים וייתן טבן ומספות לגמלים ומים וישים לפניו ואוכל ויאמר עבד אברהם אנוכי. So it's right. So it's Rubka, I believe, right? It's Rubka.
What do you call him? Rubka?
Rebecca, right? I think Rivka.
You're saying
the slave of Abraham.
The slave. I was going to say, do you guys have a tradition for his name?
We just say Abid.
Okay.
Really. So it's slave basically of Abraham.
Because we actually have a tradition that he has a name.
Interesting.
Because there is a character that appears earlier that's called Damasek Eliezer.
Okay.
Eliezer from Damasek, they say, from Damascus.
Wow.
And we say that the Eved is this character, this Damasek Eliezer. But the name Eliezer never appears here.
Oh, wow.
There's also the tradition that he was one of the people that went along with Avraham at the Akedah, the binding.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
That's super interesting. See why I like this game? It brings...
No, so according to the Jewish tradition, the way that's understood, when he tells them to remain behind, so he goes and he brings with him, he saddles up the donkey, and he takes Yitzhak, obviously, but he also brings along with him Eliezer, his servant, and Yishmael.
Okay.
And I know that in the Quran, it doesn't say who exactly he slaughtered. It just says, or who he brought up to slaughter. It just says he brought his son. They leave the name out, and so it's a debate amongst Islamic scholars.
True, if it was Ishmael
or Yitzhak. Modern days, they say Yitzhak, but many will say that no, it's Yitzhak. No, modern day they want to say Ishmael.
Yes.
Because they want to kind of because there's a lot of tension and anti-Semitism in the world. A similar place where I see this actually, and more locally, and I've even seen in recent years where people have told me one thing changes, the location of Joseph's tomb.
Mm-hmm. Many don't believe this in Shechem, you mean?
Correct. I've had people that once said, yeah, for sure that's his tomb, then switch over and say because of this whole conflict thing that's going on in this region, it's like, yeah, no, it's just some local sheikh that was buried there. It's like, why did you tell me like 5 years earlier that it's the tomb of Joseph the prophet, Joseph son of Jacob? And if you like look on the web and you kind of like quickly search what's the Islamic view of where Joseph is,
it's a Makfila, maybe?
No, it's here.
It's here also, the Islamic
the general view is that he was brought here.
Interesting.
I mean, they're definitely minorities, but if you like look up, it's like where in Islam do they say Joseph is buried? But some say, he never came out of Egypt. They didn't carry his bones out, even though it's very clear. It says, okay, Moses went back to get the bones of Joseph, and then that's the end of Sefer Joshua for us, is that he was buried in Shechem.
Wow. It's interesting. I've never been to Joseph's tomb, actually.
You've never been?
I've never been.
You've been outside of it?
I mean, barely. I mean, I've been outside once. We tried to get in, and then the Palestinian guards told us that we need permission and everything. So.
Oh really?
But the Samaritans do go there. They arrange beforehand and.
Oh nice! I'm surprised you've never been. I mean, like.
I'm planning, but perhaps this year. So.
Yeah.
For sure, it's really close. Yeah. All right. So an hour really went by fast.
Yeah.
For real. Thank you so much for coming here.
I told you it would.
I know you did. So
let's see what the viewers think.
For sure, let us know in the comments if you have any questions. We will be happy to do even more. You know, this episode I think is going to be definitely special for me as the first time, recording it and uploading it. I think people would be interested to see conversations between a Samaritan and a Jew, and seeing how what questions would arise and the differences and everything. I get asked a lot, so thank you so much.
It might be fun to do it on the live stream as well, where
for real,
to get I see how they ask you the questions.
The questions, and then they would ask,
and then they can ask the questions. Sure. But maybe they felt this boring. Maybe they don't like me.
No. I certainly didn't feel bored, for sure. So
that was easy.
Amazing. Thank you so much again.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Hope to see you again soon here. And for the viewers, again, if you have any questions for us, we're more than happy to answer.
Yeah, and even if they have questions, they can always leave comments and we'll answer.
For sure. And thank you for watching. If you stick to the end, and do leave a like and share this video, and also leave a sub if you are new to the channel. We're just starting. I think it's 1,000 episodes like this, from now. I imagine the whole ideas you would put together and learn from each other and everything. So stick with us on this beautiful journey, and hope to see you till next time. See ya.